Welcome to Yeshiva Dash, your sponsor, Nishma Sami HaKoshon Le'Abasitzchok. We're holding Metzia Daf Kuf, the 100th Daf. I mean, it's really the 99th Daf, but it's a symbolic 100, the number 100 Daf we have in Metzia. We did a long wave since the beginning. Starting the Mishnah at the top, Zok the Mishnah. Hamachliv Poro B'Chamor V'Yol. Someone who exchanges a Poro B'Chamor. Now, why you talk about an exchange? So Rashi explains. Usually, I don't have a question, I don't have a problem of how, what exactly occurred over here. Because when do you purchase something? When do you acquire it? You acquire it with Mashiach. So until a person doesn't do Mashiach, we don't acquire. Either with the right, some with the Rabban, whatever the reason, we saw before, we hold the Mashiach as what it's going. So if a person gives money and he takes the cow, as long as he didn't take the cow, it's not his. He took the cow's by him. Easy. But in our case, talk about he's exchanging a cow for a donkey. So he says, you take my donkey, I'm going to take the donkey, and by that, you're taking the cow. It's a khalifi. Oh, it's a khalifin. So now, I don't know what's exactly the status of the cow, because the cow's not in front of me. That's what the Mishnah talks about. She gave birth to the paro. Or somebody went and sold the shivcha, because the shivcha is nikra bekesef. You do it with money. So someone paid money to get the shivcha, and she gave birth. So one says, well, before I sold it, she would have gave birth, the baby's mine. The other one says, no, only after I brought it, it was gave birth, it's mine. Then you split it. So he has two slaves. And it's not so clear what was the deal about, the deal between them. The buyer says, well, I meant the big one. And the seller says, I don't remember. We made a deal, I don't remember what the deal was. He has a bori, we'll see in the Gemara. Says the seller, I know for a fact that it was sold, that I sold you the small one. Man, you're there. And the buyer says, I don't know. The thing is, again, there's a bori Shem over here. They're both definite. He says, I bought the gadol. The other says, I sold the gadol. Clear. Yeshiva. So then they have to, then they do a shvua. And Yeshiva amoicher. So Yeshiva amoicher. And the seller will do a shvua. And the one going to explain it. Why the seller does a shvua? But the seller does a shvua, the what? The seller does a shvua that he indeed sold the small one, not the big one. They both don't know. So then is then they split it. So different chalukas over here. Says the Gemara, am I yechleiku? Why you split it? Check who is the one who's holding on to it. We know the klal. We learn himself you have someone who comes to somebody else and you owe me money. Here you have a discussion with the seller and the buyer who owns what. We're talking about it's not in the rishus of anyone. It's sitting in the swamp. She will also talk about she's in the street. Says the Gemara, why don't you go based on the original owner? Then you have a why that should be good enough? So you're right. So he says, yeah, this is going to sukkos. It says you don't say now here, what's chesed more kama? You're right now outside and nobody's rishus. It's an agam. It's in the swamp. So nobody's holding on to it right now. Now that nobody's holding on to it right now, the shaila is, okay, so who is the owner?
Who's the owner of what?
Who? Right now.
We're not arguing the owner of the shivcha.
Right. So I go, what's the chesed more kama? Because Karma says, I say whatever was before stays. Right. As the Achronim, this is what we want to get to. The Achronim, Shmaitzo, Shimon say, there's a difference between chesed more kama and chazaka. Chazaka is that is a state of right now of biru. I want to know who it belongs to. I say, okay, if right now you're holding on to it, it's probably yours. Chazak's Morakamo is similar to many other chazakas of Mikar. Like you have a chazak of a mikvah. You have a mikvah that was good. You need to chaser. You say chazak, it stays where it was. You tell me the baby that. No, say if it will not change, we will be born there.
Yeah, but if the para, we're talking about a para and a shivcha, that there's no chazaka.
There is a chazaka.
There's no marakama by the child.
Of course there is. I know the cow is. The cow used to belong to owner.
This is no being.
No, so Shaila is. So I'm saying I need to know. That's what the chazaka always says. I extend the previous condition as long as I can.
This is a new being.
It doesn't matter. But again, the Shaila is.
There's no marakama. There's no rabasa. There's no.
Truly, the chazkes marakama goes in the par. The par. Oh, Shaila is. I need to know, was the par his at the time of birth, or par is already somebody else's at the time of birth? So I say the chazaka of the para tells you wherever it was, can you stay there until the last minute? That's the chazaka of the
on the par.
On the par, yeah. Says the Gemara. So the Gemara says, no, you're right. They have a chazaka over here. So this goes. There's a big discussion over here. Lamdis, acharim, all that. Do you go with the chazaka marakamo? How exactly does it work? Says the Gemara. So why don't we do it? We go with sumchus. We don't go with the chazaka. We go with sumchus. Says the Gemara, it says, below Yeshiva. Even though Sukkah said only when it's two maybes. I don't know. Talk about when we have clear, like we said in the first part of the Mishnah. Zohim, everybody knows clearly, or in the end of the Mishnah. Yes, even in Bori Bori, he said it. Says the Gemara, now, Toys is interesting. Toys, just to point this out, do you still have to get to the fact that it's Omen's Be'agam? When you say Sukkos. That it's standing in a swamp. So you don't have Chazakah now. In other words, the Sukkos agree with Chazakah at all or not? That's a big discussion here in the Rishonim. Toys points it out. Does Sukkos have any agreement that there's such a thing called Chazakah? Or Sukkos says there's no Chazakah at all? When I'm telling you that according to Sukkos, they don't have Chazakah Morakam, does it mean there's no Chazakah as well? If I'm holding on, doesn't help? Or so was holding on, chazaka works. When I'm not holding on to it, then I say it's chalakim.
Depends how you learn chazaka. Is chazaka there's a suffix, and since you don't know what to do, you go with cheskes, or because there's a chazaka, there's no suffix. That would be the machlok. Maybe. Okay.
Says the Gemara. So machlok is the Rishonim. Do you say chazaka by sukkos or not? Says the Gemara. Really, sukkos talk about sheva sheva. Boy lo yama. You didn't speak about that part. If so what's in our Mishnah? They're not certain. They're not for sure. They're in doubt. I don't know when it happened. Says what Tanan Zoimer Ein Yerdea, V'Zoimer Ein Yerdea Yechloiku. Right? One says I don't know, and the other one says I don't know. The din is Yechloiku. Right? So if you have two people, and they both are saying that they don't know, so you split it. Says the Gemara, according to Rava, meaning this whole Mishnah is Sheva Shema. So we talk about it at the beginning Sheva Shema, and then we said also that later, if he says Bari, it's a Yeshava, and then you're there, Yechloiku, like we said before, Yechloiku. El Rabba, Hashti Bori Bori Me'achloik. At the beginning of the Mishnah talks about Bori Bori. They both know for sure. Sheva Sheva Bai. Why have to tell me Sheva Sheva at the end of the Mishnah? If you're already by Bori Bori, you're holding like Sukkos that you say Achloiku. So Koshka by Sheva Sheva. But maybe. So why do you have to get to that? So that's not a question. Why not? Tanya Sefer the Gilui ratio. I need the save of the Mishnah to reveal to me the ratios. What the ratio is talking about. Maybe you'll tell me the ratio of the Mishnah is only maybe that they're both suffering. The boy not. The ratio bori. I mean, opposite of what we said before. Before we said that, it's all Sheva Sheva. He says this one will say, according to Rav Avuno, he says, Adarabah, if I'm talking about Sheva Sheva, why I need to speak Sheva Sheva twice? I have to speak Sheva Sheva once, right? So the Gemara, so you see me the ratio talk about Bori Bori, and even so Yechloiku. Very good. Let's look at the Mishnah. One says it was big, one says it was small. Now we didn't say chlik. Right? In that part of the Mishnah, we said shvur. Says the Gemara, you say all that Tzulch spoke about, that we say a chloik is only when it's a maybe and a maybe. And that's the ratio of the Mishnah. And that's the last part of the Mishnah. So that's what the chloik. In this case of the Mishnah, we say shvur. Shvur ki yeshava. But according to Rav, when it says that Tzulch is speaking of bori bori, in that case of the Mishnah, when one says, I know for a fact that, right, still no, we spoke about the first case of the Mishnah. They're arguing, when did the cow give birth? But when we get to the end of the Mishnah, what they're arguing, if it's the big slave or the small slave. So why you don't say chlik? Why you say shava? So you're right. If I don't have any shvur, I say a chlik. But if anyway I have a shvur, similar to what we spoke about yesterday's daf, but we're going to get to it back today. If you anyway have a shvur, like we have a gilgul, you add another shvur. Once you have one shvur, then Shulchan says, okay, so we just rely on the shvur. Look at Rashi. Why the Shulchan says he can shvur deraisa? Says Rashi, that kol makrin lo betikato leyodo, to lav helachu. Talk about cut his hand. We'll see soon. That's not giving helach. Hay the kabod lo gavev. He said nishboim ala avodim. There is shvur. All these rules we'll see soon. So there's a shvur. There's a shvur. That's why I don't say chlik. All the Shulchan say chlik if there's no shvur. Okay. Says the Gemara. Ayulu beis avodim chagod l'chakaton. So you have a god l'chakaton. He does a shvur. Says the Gemara. Imay shova. Right? Why you say you a shvur? He came and said, you owe me. I sold you the big. I had the small slave. And he said, no, you sold me the big slave. Right? That's the discussion. Right? It's not a mix of taina. Taina means they tell you owe me 100. He says, no, I owe only 50. Here, the buyer says, you give me the big slave. He said, no, it wasn't the big slave, it was something else. It's like what? Chitim is siren. Two different things. It's something else. In addition, it's halach. Remember, back to the beginning of the Masechtot of Dalit. We learn when a person comes to somebody and says, you owe me. And he said, you owe me 100. And he says, no, I owe you 50 and here it is. There is a tzad that you don't say, Moed doing Satayim Yeshava. So here he's saying, I want the big slave. No, you took the small slave. Here it is. So it's halach. We don't do shvur on avodim. That's the usual rule because avodim like a karka. So we have a problem. What is the shvur doing over here? Stop. How do you have a shvur in this case? So the one he didn't talk about the slave. Dmei of the gadol, dmei of the koton, dmei sodik gadol, dmei sodik tam. He came for money. He says, you owe me money for a big slave. You owe me money for a small slave. You owe me money for a big field. You owe me money for a small slave. So you're saying, in other words, the buyer says, I paid you, I want the big field. And if not, give me back the money. He says, no, you paid me a small field. Here's the deal. Take the small field. So the question is, I want my money back. Right? So we're talking about money. He said, I'm going to give you a little bit of money. So he said, you owe me 100. He said, no, I owe me 50. Right? So we're talking about which money do you have? We're talking about money. And the money is a portion of what he's claiming. He claims you owe me 100. He says, no, I owe you 50. So it's good. So that's why it's like this. That's why he's talking about, it's not halach. It's not just to take the slave. You have to get the money, to extract the money. And it's not all of it. Answers all the questions. Not talking about the Eved, I'm talking about the clothing of the Eved. Or the grain that grows in a big field, the grain that goes in a small field, the amount of grain. How much grain goes in a big field? 25 tons. In a small field, 15 tons. So the question is, how much do I owe you? So again, but the Omeram is very good. because you're talking about exact measure. That's what it is. So Mishnah by grain. Question: how much grain do I need to give you? He says 25 ton. He says only 15 ton. But by ksus, you said it's two different shirts. It's a shirt of a big person, a shirt of a small person. So what is b'dialfi? Rashi over here says b'dialfi that it's a beged sholim, and he says from this big beged I'm taking a portion. In other words, the question: which size of you have here a very big beged? And the question is which size you taking from it. So this brings Rashi to different places to talk about beged that's made. It's constructed from different, like you have a sleeve, you have the clothing. Now you can use the same one with different measurements for the same person. So it's the same taina. You a lot of it or a little bit of it. So Kashla Rishayo Midi Ksus Ktani. Does it say Ksus? And you want to say talk about the clothing of the head. It doesn't say Ksus. It says a slave. We're not talking about the Ksus. So it's hard to see this answer. Elo Mavishayo Kilun Shetano Ebed Biksusoi Visode Beoimereo. Right? It says he's tying both. He says, the slave, I bought a big slave with his clothing. The other one says, no, you bought a small slave with his clothing. Right? And so you do a shvu over the clothing and then a gilgul on the head. Says more about same question. But it's not the clothing of a big slave is a different clothing than a small slave. The outfit. Again, talking about these clothing, either a big clothing that you have to cut into pieces, or we're talking when you put items together. So you want to tell me, so what's the whole chiddush? So once I tell you shvu on the clothing, I tell you shvu on the slave as well. In other words, gilgul shvu. That's what you're going to tell me? That because I can do shvu on the metal thing, I do shvu on the eved as well? That's no chiddush. Tanino, we already learned it. We learned it. The nechosim shein metaltim movables, then you do shvu on them, they cause you to do shvu on the land as well. Hello, Sheshes, Hamani, Ramei, Tomar, Avdo, Kimetal Talim Dami. Oh! We had a problem. If it is a karka, you don't do shvu on the karka. So the more it's not shvu on the karka, it's a shvu on metaltal. And that's the chiddush over here, you do shvu on it because of metaltal. So okay, that answer, so at least you explained to me why you're doing shvu over here, even though it's not a land. Even though it's a land, we don't consider it to be a land. So at the end of the day, he claimed a big slave, he claimed a small slave. He claimed a big field, it's small slave, it's not the same time. So look at the Tran, Torah Chiti, Void of the story in Potter. Why not? Because we're going with the sheet that holds. If I say you owe me wheat and he says no, I owe you barley, Torah Chiti, Void of the story, you're chayav. Not like we said till now, that if I'm claiming A and you saying I admit B, so you don't chayav, you're not chayav shur. He holds if I claim A and you admit B, you are chayav shur. They go based on the value. So okay, so we answered the first two questions. We're going to Doma, there will be question number 2, question number 3. Question number 1, question number 3. Regarding the fact that Sevet, we hold the Kamir David is metal to do shur. Regarding the question that it is chitim and soirim, we all that's okay. Oh, what about hilach? Kati helachu. Omarovo avdo de kotel yodei the sade shechofa ba boyros shichim umehoris. Or no, talk about the slave. He knocked at his hand. He came to him and said, "Where's my slave?" He says, "Here's you." He said, "I want a big slave." He says, "No, I give you a small slave. Here he is. He's missing a hand." Oh, okay, I still owe you the hand. So he's not halach. He's not giving anything right away. Oh, the field as well. He came to the field. He gives a small field, but he's not giving complete. There's tunnels over there. Similar to Ramei, we learned the opposite of Ramei. We're going what? You said we're going with Ramei or the whole, the Avdik and the Kivtalta. The Evid has the Metalta. That's not true. We saw clearly the Ramei holds the Evid as a Mekarka. But then it says in the Mishnah, we learned the Adam Seches will come. Kozal Beimo Viskino. He stole a beimo and it became old. Avodim Viskinu or slaves became old. In other words, they changed. Shagish has exile. You go pay like the time of the exile because you have a shinu. Why Bavodim Omer Shechol Fanecho? Because he holds that what? that Shinu is not Koine because it's a karka. It's a land. So you see, it treats avodim like a land. Shinu ain't a Koine. Same way I look at it. That's not a problem. The you have to turn it around. It's the opposite Yusuf. Ramir is the one who says that the Shinu works over here. And when it says it does not work, you hold that avodim is karka. Says one second. And we might so Ramir Mekshin karka levet. My even nishboim. Av karka nishboim. Right? Tilmo. I have to nishboim. Of a karka loy. Right? Says the Gemara. It says the Gemara now that the Gemara understands that we're talking about from the slave. We just learned right now that a slave has a din that is different than a karka. And with a slave, we were miniach till now. The karka you don't do shua. What about a slave? A slave is like a karka. One a slave is not like a karka according to Ramir. Nachon? Says the Gemara. So now the Gemara says, okay, so according to Ramir, what is the hekesh of karka? We always learn throughout Shas that karka and eved there's a hekesh one to each other. So you want to tell me that now that by eved you know you do a shua, so by karka you do a shua. Till by eved do the shua and karka loy. Who said according to Ramir that's true? So well, let's take a day. The says in the Brayso, hamakli par bechamor v'yoldo. That's our like similar to our Mishnah. Chelamoy cheshiv v'yoldo. Zorim b'shusi zorim v'zeh shaisek. One says it was by me. The other one says I'm quiet. Zoch. Zorim ein yudea. Zorim yudea. They both say we don't know. Yechloiku. Zorim b'shusi. Zorim b'shusi. Both k'tayno. Yishava hamoy cheshiv v'shusi yoldo. So the moich will do a shvur. Fishkol nishboim shbotoy nishboim v'lo mishan divrei Amir. And all the nishboim they nishbo and they don't pay. So here the moicher, the buyer, because the moicher is given to me. He says, no, I'm keeping it. So the moicher is doing a shvur to keep it. Of course. Come back and say, no, I don't do shvur now in avodim, and now in the curse. Why do you mention karka? Don't we mention karka over here? That's why a mayor is coming to argue in both. So that's a raya that a mayor holds you do shvur on slaves, that's clear, and you do shvur on karka as well. So Mimai who said, maybe what Chacham will tell a mayor is we're coming against you with a tiny. You claim that avodim you don't do shvur. You do shvur. We're saying 1 second. Don't you agree that karka you don't do shvur? The same way you agree with karka they don't do shvur, or the avodim. So I know we don't have a raya from here that a karka you do shvur according to our mayor. Teida bring a raya clearly the opposite. Some things are like a land but not a land. I'm saying that's not true. One says to somebody else, I gave you 10 vines full of grapes. One says, no, you give me 10 vines, give me 5 vines. You have to do shvur. Say it's like a karka, you don't do shvur. What's the machlokes? Why is it made disagree? Because we talk about talk about grapes that are about to be harvested. Is considered to be cut or not? We may hold that because it's on the but says it's to be cut. Chacham say it's not considered to be cut. But if it's not about to be cut, everybody agrees you don't do a shvur. Why? Because a guy can do shvur. So that's why we're saying that you don't do shvur. So the Gemara says that according to our mayor, I'm doing shvur from the eved to the karka. We do again. We're back to our sugya. The Gemara speaks about avodim, and the Gemara says the eved is like a metaltari. Okay, says the Gemara. Hello, loilom. The Gemara goes back. It says that now that we established that we don't have a raya according to our mayor, according to our mayor, we don't do shvur on karka. If I don't do shvur on karka, so what is? So we're going back to the question. So how do we explain our Mishnah? Well, how do we explain our Mishnah? Says the Gemara. So we're going back to the answer we said before. The answer of Rabbi Shaya. What was Rabbi Shaya's answer? We're talking about that he said eved b'ksusoi, a slave in ksusoi. A slave in ksusoi. You add what's the chiddush? The chiddush is I do shvur on the clothing and then I do shvur on the eved as well. Says the Gemara. So what's the chiddush? That's the pashut. That we have a Mishnah like they do zoykikim. So that's what it says. The kasha l'zokikim itzech. Maybe the clothing of a slave is not considered to be metatla. It's part of the slave. Maybe the grain on the field is like the field. That's why, that's the chiddush. You're right. When I do shvu on metalta, I do shvu on karka as well, that's not a chiddush. But how do I know that the clothing is to be a metalta? That's the chiddush. That's why, that's the chiddush of our Mishnah. Now, right. Oh, so one thing that I was missing in the Mahalach. We have a problem with all this because in our Mishnah, what was the question? I was one sentence I was missing in the whole thing. I was realizing something was missing. The Gemara says, I have a problem with Rameir. Why? Rameir says you do shvu on evet, not on karka, and therefore what? We still have a problem with the Mishnah because our Mishnah has two cases. There's a case of the evet that we said do shvu. There's a case about the field. He says I bought a big field and a small field. So Mishnah evet, you said establish. It's Rameir holds that shvu works. Givaldik. What about the field? So the one didn't say in the beginning, no, Rameir holds the same way you do shvu on evet, you do shvu on the field as well. So well, that's not true. Bring a raya brew. That's not true. That a Rameir agrees that on a karka you don't do shvu. So I go back to the question: how do you explain our Mishnah? So we go back to the original answer. We talk about that you have metaltim together with the karka. You do shvu on the metaltim, you do shvu on the karka, or by evet the same thing. Why? What's the chiddush? Zaykikim. Zaykikim is not a chiddush. So where is the chiddush? Because I would think that the clothing of the evet is part of the evet, or the grain of the field is part of the field. Okay. Says the Gemara Zoy Mein Yodea Zoy Mein Yodea Chlik. We don't know the divide. Hamani Suchi is the one moment of so going back to what we said before. When we don't know, you do Cholki. That's Sumchus. Ema Sefer. Right? Let's go to the end of the Mishnah. Zeoimer. B'shusi Zoymer B'shusi. Everybody knows clearly. Yeshava Hamoichesh B'shusi Yoldo. So then you do a shvuah to B'shusi Yoldo. For the rabbi, Avunu Dome Edom Asuchas Fil Bori Bori. But really, the question I asked before, but more now focusing on a different part of the Mishnah. The was asking, but you just said that according to Rav Sumchus, even a boy yachleiku, am I shava moicher am I shava yachleiku by should be divided because Sumchus holds you always divide whenever there's a dispute. Shava boy you always divide it. Says the Gemara, moit the Sumchus echedik shvua deraiso v'tikatar deyoda kaderova. This is what the Gemara already referred to twice before. We talk about here you have a shvua deraiso. If you have a shvua deraiso, why you have a shvua deraiso? Because look about it, he cut the hand. So what if he cut the hand? So he's a moed mikzas. He comes to he tells him, you owe me a slave. He says, I owe you a slave, not the big slave, the small slave, but the slave is missing a hand. So there's no halach. So you have to do shvua on the slave. Once you do shvua on the slave, you do shvua. So then I don't come and say yachleiku. Sukkah says yachleiku, there's no shvua. But if there's a shvua, so then you go and you do shvua on the slave.
Still understand why when the argument about a cotton or a godled slave, why it's considered shua the rice. So he's not giving him the hand, but still it's an evidence.
What?
It's not considered argument. So I still understand why.
No, because that's not Rashi hands over here. You go back, they hold like a mayor, they do shua on avodah. On avodah you do. So you may lay, right, the question will be according to Rashi, what will happen and in the case, what happened with the karka?
Yeah, that's right. So it's just dafka by evidence. You're saying again dafka by
yeah. Rashi says clearly, so what will be the karka according to this shot when the Gemara ends? So we go back to the whole sugi before that, then after cheshbon. But the Gemara goes on and basically says, our Mishnah goes like sufus. That's why yachleiku. But when you have a shvua, you don't do yachleiku. You go based on the shvua. Why do you have shvua over here? So the Gemara build the whole malach. Really, if the pasha, I have to go back to the cheshbon to see. But the whole malach of the Gemara before the chura fits over here as well. What's the malach? The malach here is there is a shvua. Why there is a shvua? Because he did it on the clothing, he did it on the eved, or because he holds you do shvua on eved in the karka, the Gemara then is leichet. But I have different reasons why there's a shvua over here. Once there's a shvua, I don't say echleiku. That's where the maskana is. But said we'll stop over here. Please share continue on Shabbos from the Mishnah. Kol Tuva, good in Shabbos.